Happy Friday, everybody. Sam Shapiro back here with more of your Heat latest on FanArc. Terry Rozier has been a topic in trade rumors all week this week, and now Anthony Chang confirming and doubling down that Miami officially open to shopping the point guard before the start of the regular season. Drop in the comments if you think you're going to see Terry Rozier in a Miami Heat uniform at all this year. I would say at this point, in terms of where he lies and where Andrew Wiggins lies, Chang also bringing up Andrew Wiggins as well. Definitely going to see him at least in Miami until at least at the very, very earliest, late September, unless something crazy unforeseen happens at this point in time. I kind of don't think that Miami should totally shop Andrew Wiggins, just because they've talked time and time over the last couple of months how they want to see him at least stay in Miami for the beginning of the regular season. So if you can't get a major asset or an all-star caliber player for him at this point, I think it's definitely good to pump the brakes on any potential shopping opportunities for Andrew Wiggins. I like that call, but Terry Rozier, going to pay him more than $26 million this year. Obviously, hasn't been as efficient as I feel most Heat fans would have liked to see him be over his tenure in Miami. So, and also facing a gambling probe at this point, definitely, under investigation for that, and having to pay him a lot of money. Getting him out early at this point could definitely give Miami a little bit more financial flexibility and hopefully better assets without having to give up some draft capital. Obviously, that was the case with Marcus Smart. The front office not really being able to agree on what they wanted to shop for Smart, and that was why he ended up in LA. But drop in the comments what you think, where Terry Rozier may or may not end up at this point in time. I think it's a 50-50 toss-up if he stays in Miami to start the regular season. But at this point, I'd say there's a 75% chance, because Miami's open to shopping him right now, he could be gone before November, December, and definitely the trade deadline. If he does end up staying in Miami, I hope that he kind of develops into a little bit more of a better guard than we have seen out of him, at least in Miami so far. But at this point, I'm kind of excited to see that Miami is openly shopping him and are interested in exploring another trade for a potential veteran player in the backcourt or a potential asset that they could use in the front court. I'm going to get into some options they might be able to look into, at least for the rest of this offseason before the regular season tips off. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, if shopping Rozier for either a backcourt or experienced front court asset at this point in time is worth it, and if attaching any draft capital in addition to that would be worth getting a little bit more value, whether it was just in addition to sacrificing Rozier. But also going on in Miami's backcourt, I think the return of Dru Smith right now is looking a little bit more unlikely than ever, just because in addition to the fact that he is still recovering from that season-ending injury that he had suffered from just a few months ago, he is no longer eligible for another two-way deal with Miami because of a rule going on in the NBA that restricts a player to a maximum of 3 years on two-way deals with the same team. And now he's kind of seen that at different points during his time in Miami. And I think signing guys like Myron Gardner and Vlad Golden to two-way deals over this summer, you have guys that I think could potentially pose a little bit more of a better case to get that minimum deal or that permanent deal, at least for this season, than Dru Smith, who's coming off that injury that he suffered from last winter. So especially because he was only batting 6-2-1 off 50% shooting this past season while he was playing. Miami has definitely had his back in his road to recovery, and we're hoping that he may be able to come back this season and be a viable asset for Miami in terms of bench depth. But I think Vlad Golden and Myron Gardner definitely, like I just said before, could add a little bit more potential and value to Miami's overall roster. I really like Gardner, especially how he played in the Summer League, and because 6'6", he could really develop into a strong 2-3-way player that could really bounce around Miami's back and front court. And Vlad Golden helping out with some of the struggles in the front court woes Miami seeing. Either one of those guys, I think, at this point make a little bit more of a compelling case to get a standard deal and break away from a potential two-way contract. So even though Dru Smith not allowed to sign another two-way deal, I don't think he's more deserving of a standard contract over those guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. If maybe I'm crazy and Miami should stick with him just because they've kind of had his back for at least the last roughly 8 or 9 months now, or somewhere around that ballpark. But yeah, I definitely think at this point in time, it's pretty safe to say Dru Smith pretty unlikely that he's going to return on Miami, because at this point he's got to return now he's definitely got to return now on a permanent deal. But anyway, another crazy trade offer that I also saw going on this week involving Tyler Herro. I know people that say building around Bam being the cornerstone player of this franchise might see somewhat potential value in this, but I do not at all. I don't think trading Tyler Herro at this point is in any way, shape, or form in Miami's best interest. But I saw a proposal involving the Milwaukee Bucks, and in addition to that, the Atlanta Hawks also being somewhere in the mix. Milwaukee would get Tyler Herro, would be sending him home in a deal in exchange for Kyle Kuzma, AJ Green, an unprotected 2031 first-round pick, and an unprotected 2032 first-round pick swap. While some people might say the draft assets could be beneficial in addition to like a scoring-focused player like Kuzma, I don't know why you would trade Tyler Herro, who's coming off his best season arguably to date, averaging roughly 24 points per game, being named an all-star this past year. I mean, I think it's blasphemous if you trade Miami or you trade Tyler in that deal. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think Tyler would be completely upset going home and also being able to play with Giannis. It would be honestly kind of nice in Milwaukee's interest to do that, just because it would keep him happy for sure. But I definitely think it would be an absolutely ridiculous and stupid trade for Miami to even look into seriously. Drop in the comments what you think, if that would if Miami has any kind of interest in that, just because of some of the draft capital there. But because of Tyler really running the backcourt, and now the future of how Miami's, I guess, backcourt is really going to develop, really banking on some of those young guys that have been playing somewhat decently over the summer league. If you get rid of Herro, that's pretty much all Miami's backcourt's going to be dependent on. So I think it would be just very, very silly to shop a guy as talented as Tyler Herro, unless, there's maybe some potential that he could get hurt, suffering a season-ending injury, or potentially, dealing with something that would prevent him from playing at the level we just saw him clip at this last season. Just again, a really, really talented player, being one of the most efficient players in the NBA in terms of his step back three-pointer game and just overall scoring bag. I just think the only incentive is for him to go home and play in Milwaukee, but I don't know why he would do that, just because of how Miami's been good to him, and now it's honestly really him and Adebayo's team at this point. So again, I just think this is an absolutely wacky trade, and I think it would be totally crazy for Miami to look into this one absolutely seriously. But going back to potential offers surrounding possibly Rozier and maybe Wiggins, are there other big men that Miami could maybe trade for right now that would maybe be worth fixing some of those front court woes? And I already touched on Nikola Vucevic earlier this week, how he could potentially offer some maybe help to Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo in the front court, being a seasoned big man, being able to play at the 5 spot would allow Bam to come down into the 4 and would give Kel'el Ware a little bit more time to really become an all-star, although we're really expecting that out of him this upcoming season. 2 big men that I think that maybe Miami could look for with trade packages involving Rozier. They would probably have to cough up some draft assets in these packages, but for Jakob Poeltl, the Raptors center could provide size and rim protection behind or alongside Adebayo, but acquiring him might, like I just said before, they might have to give up a ton of trade assets, and they might have to give up a little bit more than just Rozier. They might have to give up, if they decide to give up Fontecchio, which I don't think would be the best idea right now, just because we want to see how he's going to gel with Miami right now. Could definitely pose some 3-and-D, could add a lot to Miami's 3-and-D game overall. So I don't know if it would be worth coughing up assets if Miami's just trying to get Rozier out of there, just trying to get rid of his contract and get a little bit more financial flexibility, because you'd kind of be sacrificing that, signing a guy to a deal like that. You probably wouldn't be able to give him kind of what Marcus Smart saw from the Lakers, a 2-year, $11 million deal. You probably have to give him a little bit more money. So, but that could be a veteran guy that Miami might be involved in trading for. In addition to that, Nick Kastem could also be another good veteran or a seasoned big man that Miami could look into trading. While the Brooklyn Nets are kind of in a rebuilding mode and might prioritize the capital, Claxton could, give defensive presence to a team like Miami that prioritizes winning. So I definitely think having at least a little bit more experience than your average NBA rookie, having a guy like Nick Claxton could, really, I think, juice up Miami's front court and could potentially be involved in some sort of deal for Rozier. I definitely think it would be somewhat worth it and would kind of add value with Miami not having to give up a whole lot of draft assets in addition to that, giving a seasoned guard like Rozier in a deal pertaining to those. If you think any of those deals would be somewhat realistic, let me know in the comments. I don't think either one of those guys would potentially come to Miami more than Vucevic would, but I think that if Miami's trying to get rid of the $26 million they have to pay Rozier, signing Vucevic might not be the best way to go about that either. But I think three of those guys could be looked at for potential packages involving Rozier. Do I think any of them are very likely at this point? I'm not sure. You probably have to include draft assets in some of those deals just because those players are not, they would add a little bit more value to your standard team and would definitely help fix some of the front court woes Miami's experiencing right now. That's going to do it for today's episode. Hope everybody has a great weekend. And of course, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Once again, I'm Sam Shapiro, and thanks so much for joining us. Have a good one.